Hello coders and welcome to Lab 1 tutorial. What I wanted to do is demonstrate in this tutorial what we went over in class. So let's get started. The first thing you'll want to do is once you have BlueJ open is to create a project. So we're going to create new projects and let's call this Lab 1 and save it to our desktop. So you'll simply just select the path where you want it to and go Lab 1. And we're going to save this to our desktop. Okay. And then now you're going to see that we have our work area open. One of the things you might want to do is go into Tools and go to Preferences and to hit this, check this box that says Display Line Numbers. I also increased my font to 30 because the font on my Microsoft Surface that I'm recording this on is really fine, so I wanted to make sure you guys could see this. But you'll want to set this display line numbers, and that will be convenient, especially if I'm trying to help you. I'll say what line number is something on. Alright, so the first step we wanted to do then is create a new class. So it doesn't really matter what we call it. It'll eventually wind up to be circle, but it doesn't really matter. Once we put the code inside, we'll see that whatever this class name is right here, that'll be what the class name goes out to on the workbench. So, or work area I meant. So the first thing we wanted to do is go into BlueJ and copy the circle program. So this I gave to you, and I just kind of want to have some familiarization with Blackboard or with BlueJ so that you get used to some of the features on BlueJ. So I basically replaced all the initial stubs that BlueJ creates with the context of circle.txt that was in Blackboard. So you'll see that as it says public class circle, no matter what we typed when we first created our class, it'll automatically go to that public class circle. I don't expect students to know what's in this program. It's more just to show the features of BlueJ. So there's a couple ways we can compile this. We can either hit compile right here, you'll see in this upper left hand corner. We can close out of this and then go back into our work area, and you'll see these slashed lines. This means this class is not compiled. So we can either click compile here, or you can right click and select compile here. And if we have no errors, it'll say compiling, and you'll see compiling done down here. So that's a good thing. If you have any syntax errors, you'll have to correct those. So the first thing we want to do is just kind of play around with this class, and kind of like what I showed in class, we have that cookie cutter of the lobster, and you essentially now have a circle cookie cutter. So if you select this new circle, we'll see anytime you see new, that's going to be our Java currency to stamp out a circle object. So what that means is it's going to create a circle object essentially from our blueprint or class called circle. If we do this, it'll automatically put a name down there for us. So circle 1 is great. And you'll see that we're using this default constructor, and it's going to automatically set our radius to 5. It's kind of hard to see, but hopefully you guys can see that. Once we do this, you'll see that we have this object down here. If we right click the object and look at inspect, we will in fact see that the radius instance variable is set to 5. So we'll get more about this when we start going into classes. We also have these things with parentheses. These are called methods, and they're the actions or the verbs that we could do with this object. So for example, if we wanted to calculate the area, if we take 5 squared times 3.14, we get 78.53. And that sounds pretty reasonable because if we said 5 squared 25 times 3, that would be 75, and we add the 0.14, so that's approximately right. But let's try something else. If we have a radius of 5, then if we do the circumference, then that would be 2 pi r, so that'd be 2 times 2r, which is going to be 2 times 5 and 10 times 3.14, so we'd expect that to be 31.4. So that'll give us a good indication of whether this method to calculate our circumference is working. So that does indeed look good, 31.4159. So now let's create another object. So let's go up here and we're going to create a new object this time, but we're going to add our own radius in. So for this one, let's put a radius of 10 because this will allow us to easily check that our calculate area function is operating properly. So you want to make sure that all of your methods work prior to you giving out your code to somebody else. So if we inspect circle 2, we'll see that this does have a radius of 10. So now if we go back to our calculate area method, if we do pi r squared, that's 10 squared or 100 times 3.14, so we expect that to be 314.159. So this does look like it also calculates correctly. If we do the circumference, that should be something like 62. And then we have these other two methods in here for setting the radius and getting the radius. If you remember from our lectures, we said that we will not be able to directly access those instance variables like radius because we said we're using information hiding or encapsulation. So if we wanted to, we can actually use this method, and other classes outside this class or other objects will also be able to use this method because we said it's going to be public. So I know that's a mouthful, but we'll cover more over the next 4 or 5 weeks on this, and it'll start making sense. So let's set our radius to something like 20 here. When we set the radius to 20, we can use the get radius now to validate that it is 20 and it is in fact 20. So that's the first part. So once you have this, just take a screenshot of this workbench. And the easiest way to do that on a Windows machine is doing the Snipping Tool. You'll be using this from time to time throughout the semester in Java. So my recommendation is once you have it on your desktop, you can pin this to your taskbar so it's easy and convenient for you to get to this. So if you click New, you can now just take a picture of this. And this will be one of the deliverables that we have for this assignment. So let's go File, Save As, and let's create a new folder on our desktop called like Lab1 Submission. The reason I made it Submission is because we already had a folder called Lab1. That's our BlueJ folder, and we don't want to submit that. We'll just submit this Lab1 submission. But actually, if you wanted to, we could use that folder as well. So let's do that. We'll just use our Lab1 folder. Or actually, let's do the Lab1 submission. Okay, and then we can call this like circle workbench. Okay, and now we have that in there. So now let's go in and do part 2 of our lab where we start working with add two numbers. So we go back. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to create a new class. And for example, let's test out my theory of, I'm just going to type anything in here and we're going to open this up. And we'll see that BlueJ will automatically create this stub. It'll have some description. And we'll see it says public class, whatever I typed in right there. So you can just ignore this. This is just something to get you started if you're starting from scratch. So let's go back into BlueJ and pull the add two numbers. Okay, it's going slow. Here we go. So add two numbers. And let's grab all this stuff here. So we'll go back into BlueJ, and then we're going to grab all this and delete it, and then paste in what we had in BlueJ. So we'll learn at the end of chapter 2 that Scanner allows us to get input from our users. And we'll see that Java comes with a rich set of classes that are already made for us, that as long as you import them, you can essentially use them to create objects. So remember, in this case, Scanner would be a blueprint, and then down below here we'll be creating a keyboard object using the Scanner blueprint or cookie cutter, and we always do that using new. And we'll learn later on that these are all called constructors, and constructors will always have the same name as a class. So it'll be the constructor, and it'll say new, and then the constructor will be the same name as a class. More about that later. So let's update this description and say something like add two numbers and display result. And this is going to be some pseudocode of what we do here. So we'll define our variables, we'll put a message to the user, we'll create a scanner object, we'll use the scanner object to get two integers from the user, and then let's add another thing in here. So we're going to do 5, add, or then we'll just say output message and result, because we can either create a sum variable or we could just output the message and result. So let's just leave that as is. For the author, you need to update this with your information. So what did I just do there? So I'm going to take this away, but again, make sure you update this with your information. And version, we'll say version 1.0, but if you make any changes and do any submissions in Blackboard, perhaps you could do like 1.1 or 1.2, but this will be our first submission, so we'll call it 1.0. And then the last date of updates, let's call this 2015 01 and then 3.1. Okay, so now we have everything in here, and this looks pretty good. So we can compile this, and this time we'll compile it. Notice that I updated the class to add two numbers. If we go look at our work area in BlueJ, we'll see that it still is like the FSD whatever. So if we compile this, we'll see that it changed now to add two numbers. Okay, so now we can run our program. And to run this, you'll right-click your compiled program, and we always have to run the main method to run our programs. Unless you just want to inspect the objects, at which you can do that in BlueJ, but normally you always have to have an application for it to run. So let's do our, let's see, let's see numbers. Okay, so here we're going to run our main. And then once you have this, you're just going to click OK. And now you'll see, hello out there, I'll add two numbers for you. Enter two whole numbers on a line. So in the lab, I said to add 5 and 10 together. You can either do 5 enter, 10 enter, or 5 space 10. And we'll see why this works later on in Lab 2 or Lab 3. So we'll do this, and it says the sum of those two numbers is 15. This looks good. So let's do our options. So now we're going to save this output to a file. So let's go back into our desktop and go into Lab1 submissions. And let's call this something like add to numbers. And then always make sure you put a .text extension on the end of these. And we'll save. Okay? So that's okay. So we'll close out of this guy. And then the next step was to get a copy of add to numbers, create a new class called add three numbers, and then update that to make it work. So let's go create a new class. And again, I'll just type anything because that'll automatically get updated. And let's go back into add two numbers. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back into our program here and then wipe out all the defaults, and then I'm going to add this in here. So some of the things we're going to have to update on this one is we're no longer adding two numbers and displaying the result. Now we're adding three numbers and displaying the result. So all these steps are pretty good, except now we're going to use scanner object to get three integers. Output the message. So this will be, we could still use the same author, version, and since. Remember, it's key to use these tags because if we run our Java docs, oh wait a second, we'll have to compile this. Let's see. Oh, so this is complaining because we already have add two numbers. So now if we add three numbers, so now we can do our documentation and it'll work. So we'll see this automatically generates a HTML web page for us. As we spoke to in class, everything comes from Java Lang object. Everything's derived from that. And you could see that the @since, @version, and @author tags generated this for us. We'll see that here's our constructor. If we don't have one, Java will automatically create that for us. We'll learn more about that later. And this is just going to give us information about our class. Again, more on this later. So let's go back into our source code. So we had to update our class. And then we said we're going to be adding three variables. So let's add n3 here. And then let's update this to say we're going to add three numbers. Enter three. Yep, didn't want to do that. Add three whole numbers. Okay, so we declared these, and we'll learn more about this in chapter 2, but we declared these integers, and now we have, anytime you see this equals right here, single equals in Java, that's an assignment operator. So that's different than what we've learned in math class for years and years. If you want to see if something equals something, then you have to use a double equals, and that will be a Boolean expression that will say if this equals something, then it'll assign it as true. Otherwise, it'll say it's false. So for this particular case, what we're doing is we're assigning the number that the user puts in into n1. So let's make another one of these guys for n3. So I'm just going to be lazy. Copy, paste, and I'm just going to do n3. Notice also along the way that we have comments like input variables, get input from user. So you can see that if you had to go back into this code, not that it's very complex, but it just kind of shows you some of the comments. And then our output will be the sum of those, let's update this to three numbers, is, so now we're going to do the output of n1 plus n2 plus n3. So now if we compile, I compile from here, we'll see that we have a third class now, add three numbers. So if you run your main, click OK. So and this time you can see that we have the output from the previous version. You'll see that in options here there's a couple things. One, you can clear. The other you could say is clear screen at method call. So what that means is every time you run this, it'll clear the screen. And then also, anytime we do really long programs with large outputs, you're going to want to put this, check this unlimited buffering. And that way it'll just, if it runs off the screen, it'll capture everything. And we'll do that especially when we start doing looping programs. So in the directions it said to add 5. And then let's do them on individual lines this time. 5, enter, 10, enter, 15, enter. And now it says the sum of those three numbers is 30. So this looks pretty good as well. So if you have some of the tail end of the previous assignment, that's okay. But let's just save this file, save the file. Okay, so now this time, let's say add 3 numbers. .text. Okay, so we're almost here. So we said in our directions we wanted to have a screenshot of the circle workbench. We wanted to have output of our 2 classes, add 2 numbers and add 3 numbers. The other thing we said we wanted to do is have a copy of our Java files that we changed and altered. So even though we didn't change much in add 2 numbers, we still updated the description. And in add 3 numbers, we certainly made changes there. So you'll want to grab these guys and make sure you copy and you do not cut. If you cut, you'll have no records of doing your work. So we'll hit copy. We'll go into Lab1 submission here. We'll paste these guys in here. And these will be the 5 files that you'll submit for Lab1. But Blackboard won't let us submit a folder, so what we'll do is we'll close this guy out, and now we're going to create a zip folder of this. In Windows, you can right-click, send to, compressed zip folder, and then now we have our zip folder. So if we go back into Blackboard, we'll click Lab Submission. And then you're going to click on Lab1. And then if you want to write some comments, you can on the right submission. Or you could just simply attach the file. So we'll browse our computer. We'll go to the desktop. And we said we wanted to do our Lab1 submission zip. Open. And you'll see here's what you're getting ready to submit. So you just simply click submit button down here and then your lab is uploaded. So hopefully this was an informative video for you on how to do Lab1, and by all means please give me or let me know of any questions that you have. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.